So my guest this week is Emily Huckstep, a digital marketeer and business coach. Emily has navigated the challenging waters of social media to build her audience and customer base, as well as the choppy seas off the south coast of the United Kingdom for her all year round sea swimming health and well-being business. Emily also happens to be my daughter, and I'm super excited to have Emily on the show with me to talk about the impact of artificial intelligence in her market space. So welcome, Emily. How are you keeping?
What an introduction. I couldn't have written that better myself. I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm good. Good. It's really warm down here at the moment. So getting in the sea as much as I can before it starts getting really cold. Ian went in twice this week for his annual swim. So that's where we're at the moment.
Excellent. All right. So look, the focus really of the conversation over the next 10 or 15 minutes is really around artificial intelligence. And most of the people that listen to my show are interested in broadly what we call emerging technologies and the utility of them. How are
Mm.
they being used and what difference are they making to industries? Because it's one thing to talk about kind of technology and it just doesn't really resonate for people. So I'm curious to understand, you know, different perspectives of how you're sick because I'm using AI all the time. So I'd love to get your thoughts, Emily, on how you see AI. Are your clients asking you about AI? Are you using AI? Is it of any importance or significance for you yet?
Yeah, massively. My first real interaction with it was last autumn when I was teaching one of the courses that I teach at AUB, and this was the digital marketing course. And essentially, it's a 10-week course, and I teach people the fundamentals of digital marketing. So we cover, CRM, email marketing, social media, brand development. It's, a very kind of fundamental course. But and this was kind of as Chat GPT was like starting to become a bit more mainstream. So it wasn't quite out there. One of
Yeah.
students, the assignment was to create a month's worth of content ideas for Instagram. And one of the students said, "Can I use Jasper?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know what Jasper is." So
Hmm.
she showed me, and we had a demonstration within the class as to what it was. That then led to a question that we posed, to the room, which was, is it ethical now, through the scope of this, piece of homework that they were given, is it ethical for them to be using AI to support them in their homework that they had to do for the week? And it
Yeah.
sparked this conversation. And ultimately, what we decided was that yes, it is ethical because so many people struggle with content creation because they don't have that right brain, kind of creative side.
Yeah.
And we actually came to the conclusion that yes, it's ethical and yes, it's necessary. So that was the first interaction that I had with it. Now, fast forward like almost a year, because I'm about to go and start teaching again in October. I'm now integrating it into the course that I'm teaching because within the last 12 months, what I've seen is, relatively, I'd say, relatively speaking, maybe a handful of people would be talking about this. Whereas now, every single person that I know, who has a business is talking about this. Every single client that I have is talking about this. It's become so ingrained in the way that we approach our marketing. For me, yes, I use it within my business. I have clients that I support with their marketing, and I have consulting clients where I do their marketing for them. And I have online courses where I teach marketing. And I use it throughout all of those, kind of facets of my business. I also use it for my own business. For me, really, the angle that I see, kind of AI having is that it is um, a huge assistant to people who aren't naturally, kind of talented at creating content. I think it closes the gap for business owners in terms of the resources they have available. You think a solopreneur, let's say somebody is running their business from their kitchen table. They have,
Yeah.
2 hours a day, for example, to get it off the ground. That person is not going to have a chance if it takes them 2 hours to write one email. Whereas if they can create a series of sales emails using AI to help them build a framework, it's going to give them a leg up. So I guess from my perspective, I'm really looking at it as, how can this tool or these tools help small business owners? and help close the gap between the brands that have the funds to pay for a marketing department and those people that are really hustling to try and make it on their own. So for me, my view is if we can make it more equitable and give these tools to people that are really going to leverage them and get benefits from them, why wouldn't we use them?
That's an excellent point. But I mean, there's a ton of stuff to unpick it out of what you just said there. But that last point is a really important one, which is this almost this democratization
Mm,
of technology. Because if you're, I don't know, say you're a major global consumer brand, you'll have a marketing budget in the millions and you'll have armies of people to be able to do all this kind of stuff. And to compete against that when you're one person or a 10 person or even a small business, let's say 100 people that might have a marketing department of one.
mm,
I mean, you know when people will say to you, "Can you be my marketing department?" And that it means you have to do
yeah,
everything,
right.
doesn't it? You know, you're doing all the creative stuff, you're doing all of the administrative stuff, you're doing all the boring stuff like feeding social media every day with content and stuff. And if all of a sudden you can introduce some tools that will just create 30 days worth of social media content in one go, we've seen all these videos. You go into ChatGPT, you get 30 days of quotes, you move over to Canva, you can load it all up as data.
Mm,
Canva will create 30 different posts for you. You can automate the scheduling. And what would have taken, you know, a couple of hours before, can now be 20 minutes.
mm,
And so that's the kind of thing. But I was curious because you started with Jasper, which is interesting because Jasper is one of the sort of the bigger name
mm.
tools. Is Jasper? Are you seeing Jasper a lot, or and then when you talk about when you start your course in October, have you moved more to sort of the foundational platforms like ChatGPT or
Yeah.
maybe Claude or
So
because Jasper's a paid for product, isn't it?
yeah, I have never used Jasper, and my only experience with it has been when this student talked about it last September or October, whenever it was. I
Hmm.
was not inclined to go and use it, but I did really get into ChatGPT. And since then, on your recommendation, I have been using Pi.ai and Claude and
Mm,
really like those. Um, I I think because there are free tools, it doesn't make sense to go and use a paid tool. And I have seen it, AI being, kind of coming through other tools that aren't AI tools, like, for example, Notion. It's now in Squarespace. Like, you have all of these platforms now that are embedding AI as part of their native software and their native approach to how you create content within their platform. But for me, I like to use it as a way to bounce ideas and a way to kind of build frameworks for content.
yeah,
Jasper, I haven't explored. I think primarily because it is paid. And again, for me, I think my angle with all of this is that it should be free. We have all of this technology, and there is such there is this huge gap between these massive businesses and corporations that have access to, great technology, and then the every person that is struggling. And I think as well, something that I see and have seen a lot in the business world, especially the small business world, and that's the angle that I'm coming from because that's my market, is that there's this idea that there's some kind of secret out there to success. There's some kind of secret with regards to like creating great sales copy. And often it's not a secret, it's just the tools you have access to and the knowledge that you have
yeah,
access to. And I have seen, I think because I am naturally quite tech savvy in that I pick things up quite quickly, and I have a mindset which is, get on board rather than fight these things because this is the direction we're going, so may as well work with them, not against them. But I have so many, friends who are business owners, especially down in Bournemouth. I'd say, you know, I don't know, 95% of the people that I know down here have some kind of small business, either a side hustle or it is their main
yeah,
income. But they don't know how to use these tools because nobody's really saying, these are for you, they're free, you should use them. It's kind of like, it's kind of like crypto. It's like this weird crypto thing that only certain people know and only certain people are benefiting from. Um, with regards to kind of bringing it through into the course, my aim is to really just shed some light on the fact that there are these tools out there and they are free. is anything
Yeah.
really free? That's the question. But ultimately, like, yeah, that's a free tool. It's the same as Canva. I'll always say to people, yeah, okay, you could get Adobe if you want to become a graphic designer, etc. But actually, where's your time best spent? Like, just get Canva. It's a free tool. It was created to give access to people, to make graphic design simple. And that's what I think is happening with these AI tools. But it's almost like people don't know about it. So if I can
Yeah.
talk to, I guess like demystify it on the course and really just say, you know, there are tools. Let's experiment with them. Let's try them. I mean, the course that I teach, honestly, even the idea of email marketing, people are so afraid of it because they don't know, they don't know what to write. They don't know how to use the software. They're afraid that they're going to annoy people. So if I can help shift perspectives on that, then I can definitely do that with AI. And I think, again, like I've said before, but it all for me comes down to making this kind of technology accessible, making it easy to use and simple to approach, and making it something that people can, you know, I guess kind of befriend and add into their toolkit and not be afraid of it and not think, I don't know how to use it, therefore I'm not going to use it. I think it's one of those things where so much in, marketing, branding, any kind of creative or, kind of like marketing role, there's so much that's gate kept. It's like, oh, we're not gonna
Yeah.
show you our secret as to how we come up with like great taglines. We're not gonna, we don't want everyone to use Adobe Photoshop because, then it means that, that people don't want that to happen because they think that it's a skill that, is super niche. But actually the reality is all of these like pieces of tech and, all of this AI technology, really all it's doing is just closing that gap. So
Yeah.
if I can help close that gap, then I will. And I think as well, like, I had a friend even yesterday, we were messaging on our group chat and she said, is Chat GPT the thing to use? And I said, well, try these other ones and see how you get on. And she instantly replied and said, I don't know how to use it, And I was like, you can't use it like a search engine. It's different. You have to interact with it and you have to give it good prompts. And I said, I kind of said, go into Claude and start with the sentence that says, I do this. I want to do this. Ask me 10 questions to get to know me.
Yeah.
Then, so kind of like priming it and helping her come to terms with, the idea of speaking to it like not like Google, but I still think people are afraid of it.
I'm glad you sort of said that because I'm so close to it, I forget that it must also be quite daunting for
Hmm.
some people because just the terminology of artificial intelligence or AI. But of course, what I would say to people is that you got to remember that actually the technology itself isn't new, and the current what they call these large language models that are driving this current wave of AI are 2017 was when they really started to be
Mm.
developed. But AI goes back to the 1950s and 60s. It goes back a long way. The key thing was that the introduction of ChatGPT was this chatbot, this ability to have a human-like
Mm.
conversation with the artificial intelligence machine. And that's what ChatGPT unleashed. And then you had Bard and you've got Llama 2 and you've got Anthropic's Claude and you've got Pi and so on. And these have basically created this human interface or this, I say human, that's again jargon, this ability to just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And when I chat to Pi, which Emma, is my
Mm.
favorite of the AIs, I have a chat as though it's a business coach because they're really good at asking you questions and they're the kind of questions that a coach would ask, which kind of leads me on to get your point of view because you've done business coaching as well. You've done one-to-one coaching, you've done classes, you teach at university. So you've kind of been the educator, but also the coach, business advisor. How do you see AI kind of changing that, if at all? Can you see a situation when, you wouldn't actually need an Emily on a one-to-one session because you could just have, you could have your friendly
Mm.
AI and give them your problems to solve. I mean,
I mean,
what's your sense as to where that direction of travel is going on as a business
from
coach?
a consumer point of view, I think it's a great thing because not everyone wants to have a human interaction because they're maybe introvert or they are limited on time, or maybe they're like, for example, imagine if you have a full-time job and you're a parent and yet you want to start a business. You don't have time to make calls. You also don't want people to know that you have a coach. If you could have an app and then just use that as a way to, kind of help solve your problems, why wouldn't you do that? It's the same with a lot of these other areas, like, anything in personal development. There are apps now for everything. I mean, you know, th- whether you want to start a new habit routine, you can get an app or you could get a coach. If you want a PT, you can get an app or you can get an in-person PT. I think for me, let the consumer decide because people want different things. Like, you know, there are some things where I would love to have AI and an app for because it's easier, it's quicker, it's simpler, generally cheaper. And again, that makes it more accessible. So I think we have to bear that in mind. Not everyone has the luxury of being able to afford to have a coach because it is a luxury. That's not something that, again, somebody that's, struggling financially is going to spend money on. So if they get an app for free and get quality advice, it's going to actually help them. Great. But also, I think there's always going to be people that want human interaction, whether that is because they require that in order to stay
True.
motivated. For example, I have a coach, so a great example is for my workout. So I go to the gym every morning and I have a digital program that I follow through an app. I haven't had any human interaction with that app, and yet I still diligently show up to the gym every day and I follow the routine. Whereas for my business, I need a person to hold me accountable because I haven't got the same motivation that I have with my fitness. So people have different ways to feel motivated. And I think ultimately, again, if you can make it more accessible, great. And if you can, tailor it to different people's needs, great. From a business perspective, I don't feel threatened. I think it's one of those things where, and I said this to you the other day, but I'm sure artists and designers felt threatened, illustrators, cartoonists, when we had, different technology that would help them with that, like Adobe, like Photoshop, photographers, for example, and now we have Photoshop. But again, it's not about this technology taking over or replacing because we still need human input in order to make them really efficient and really effective. It's kind of like we saw it last year with Instagram when Instagram introduced Reels, though everyone was up in arms about it. We like the old Instagram, we like the grid, we like photos. But the fact is, consumers ended up consuming both because actually they realized they liked both static images and video. So great, win-win situation for the consumer. And businesses either evolved and adapted and realized that they liked it, or they stayed the same and nothing really changed for them anyway because their initial customers didn't actually go anywhere. So I think a
Yeah.
lot of this is just fear in people, but I think it comes from not knowing how to use it, not knowing how to embrace it, and also just not really, I guess, kind of knowing that your skills are transferable. I think that's something that I would encourage business owners and clients to do, especially those in creative spaces. Like I have clients that are photographers, brand designers, web designers. I would just encourage them to think about their transferable skills, maybe upskill so that they actually have more opportunity. Because I do think the worst thing you can do is be resistant and kind of stuck in your ways because you will get left behind and like it or lump it, that's
Yeah.
the way it's going to go.
I agree entirely with you that the the adoption of technology throughout humanity has always been is a continuous and will
Mm,
continue to happen. And there's we adapt. So the analogy I always use is there used to be people that were employed to operate lifts, and we used to have
yeah.
halls of large rooms, predominantly of women that would be typing, or there used to be people that would operate a telephone exchange. There used to be people that would walk on a bus collecting the money, and now you've got drivers buses. So there has always been that element of technology disrupting and changing, and what history tells us is that it just creates new jobs, and the displacement isn't of humans to just be inactive, but to humans to actually do something different, because human creativity tends to fill the gap that is then created
Mm,
by the technology. And I think the point you've made all the way through this is that as AI as a tool that will assist and help an individual, to improve their workload is the key one. This is not an alternative. This is not a human or machine. This is a human and machine kind of solution that we're going for. But most of these AIs are, as you say, that you just go to a website, you open them up, and then they're running. But there is this fear of them. What do you think needs to happen for people to become so comfortable that they're as comfortable opening up Claude for a chat as they are as opening up Google search to go find a recipe for tonight's dinner?
Mm. There's so much opportunity out there for people to um, grow and try new things and, be better people, earn more money. But so much of it is overcomplicated and so much of it is gatekept. And so much of it is just, um, I just think a lot of the language around all of these sectors it's geared at a certain type of person and it's not geared at the every person. So it's the same with investing. The reason I use that is that I recently signed up to this platform called Female Invest. Now, you would think in this day and age that we don't need to have a platform for women to help them with investing, but we do because a lot of the financial sector, especially the investment sector, the language, the education, the knowledge is aimed at a certain type of person, and that tends to be a well-educated, professional man. I think tech is very similar. We know that a lot of, jobs within tech are not taken up by women because even just the language barrier around a sector like technology can be daunting for people because they don't, because they're not in it, they don't know how to speak the language and therefore they don't feel like they're welcome or part of that space. So I think in order to make it, you know, a safer space, the first thing is to have visibility of a more diverse range of people using those technologies. The second thing I think is to have more education around it. And, for example, like Claude and Chat GPT are so easy to use. Like you literally, you literally go
Yeah.
into Google, type it in, and then you're in it. You can sign up. But generally speaking, once you've gone through that, email sign up, you're in it, you can use it. I knew what to ask them because I'd done research and I'd listened to, podcasts talking about, prompts to give Chat GPT, etc. The average person who's just heard about it on a podcast and not had that information around, you have to speak to it, intuitively, you have to give it lots of prompts. They might use it, go on and think, well, it's not working the way that I think it should. Therefore, that problem is with me, the user, rather than you know, realizing and kind of understanding that actually the problem is that there just isn't enough education around it. So it's not you, the user, the small business owner sat at home working from your kitchen table. The problem isn't you. The problem is that people haven't been sharing enough about it so that you feel empowered enough to go and use it as a tool. So I think
Mm.
for me, the whole message, I guess, that I've tried to bring across during this conversation is that there needs to be more inclusion. There needs to be more diversity with the people that are represented because you cannot, it's just too easy to fob off the fact that actually a lot of these technologies are not being used because people don't see themselves represented in those technologies, in the spaces. Um, and, therefore they don't feel welcome. So do you know what I mean by that?
I don't actually. I struggle to understand. It doesn't intuitively make sense to me.
Mm.
But then I am that white middle-aged bloke,
Yeah, I mean,
um, kind of
there is,
like that's used to using it, and therefore
yeah,
for me, using technology isn't a barrier. But that's also partly because I've spent my whole career
yeah,
in IT, and so whilst I'm not a super technical person, I know more. I'm more comfortable with technology than maybe
yeah,
most people. But that's because I've
yeah.
always worked in it. I guess the point making of a barrier to entry or a barrier
Mm.
or resistance for say a female user is that it's kind of seen as it's got a, like you saying it's got like a male identity for these chatbots.
A lot of the
Yeah.
sectors are represented by, one demographic of people, which tends to be white, cis, middle-aged men. And I'm not saying that they don't also belong there, but, like there have been studies that show that in movies, when you see a woman playing a role, like Gina Davis, I can't remember what the movie is, but Gina Davis played the role of either president of America or something like that in a TV show. That year, more like young girls enrolled in political studies. You know, they applied to do things that they wouldn't have, like there were unprecedented numbers. So they can,
Mm.
people have tracked and studies show that when you see representation in a space, you feel that you can also belong there because you can visibly see that other people who look like you are doing similar things. So these spaces that are typically taken up with one demographic, like technology, like finance, let's just use those as example,
Mm.
finance and technology, it inevitably creates this barrier because representation really
Do you think?
matters.
Would you say? Having, because you've used Pi, and
Mm,
at a very simple level, Google's Bard. Bard is a male-ish name. Um, Claude from Anthropic is a male-ish name. ChatGPT kind of is more it's neutral, let's say, but it's certainly, whereas Pi, which stands for personal intelligence. But when you go into Pi, the interaction with Pi is deliberately, because they've written Inflection
mm,
AI have written Pi to be, very deliberately an empathetic, kind, listening, supportive uh, artificial intelligence friend. It's designed quite deliberately to behave in that way, and so it's
mm,
much more nurturing and caring. And I would say, and I'm not entirely comfortable at kind of like labeling things masculine and feminine, but I think for the purpose of this exercise, I would probably say Pi would, on a spectrum, would be more towards the feminine, female end
mm,
of it, compared to say Bard. Or although actually, when you're in the actual interaction, um, the large language models are gender neutral. They're not
mm,
designed to be one thing or the
yeah,
other. And they'll ask, if you say that to them, if you say, you know, if you say to Claude, are you a male or female? They'll say, no, I'm
mm.
a computer program.
I don't think it's the apps that are the problem. Like once you're in these, pieces of technology, they're not the problem. I think the issue is that just being in that space, and taking up that space doesn't feel comfortable for a lot of people who don't fit that demographic of representation within that industry. And that's why, like let's use Female Invest as an example.
Mm,
The reason they've set up this education platform to help bring more women into finance is not that it's not that women don't know, specifically what to do. It's that they don't see themselves in there, therefore they don't think it's something they should be doing. And I do think that is, kind of the same maybe narrative that is within
mm,
technology. So I don't think it's the
interesting.
platforms themselves, but I think it's the idea of doing something, and even just that phrasing, emerging tech. Most people won't know what that means, unless they've been privy to conversations or, podcasts or things like that talking about it. That I think is why ChatGPT has been so popular because on platforms like Instagram, TikTok, podcasts, people have talked about it. Therefore, they've demystified it and they've made it this thing that anybody can use. And I think that that just has to happen more across the board within technology. So
Yeah,
it's not
sure.
the
Okay.
platforms necessarily. It's just that entry
Mm.
point of saying, is this something that I could use? Is this something that I should be using? Um, and I think everyone should.
But final question, and then we will wrap up because I've taken up a lot of your precious time. Mm. And this is probably aimed more at your clients who are asking you when they talk to you, and AI and the use of AI comes in. I mean, there is a downside to these tools. We know that artificial intelligence has a habit of what they call hallucinations. It will make stuff up, and it will make
Mm,
stuff up so convincingly that it will tell you that it's correct, even though you know, it's absolutely not correct. And the
yeah.
the, the tech companies are working around stuff like that. But for a small business owner, or a small business, let's say you're a small bunch of people, and you're trying to use these tools to just do more work with less people. There are some downside risks that need to be managed. I mean, is that coming up? Are you seeing people saying, "Well, I can see the upside, but also I'm a bit wary of it, and I don't want to get myself into hot water"? And I mean, are you seeing people also timid of it or a bit nervous of
I think so. Again, I think it comes down to not knowing how to use it. And, I very much see it as you can use it as a framework or a prompt, but then you have to bring your own spin and essence to it ultimately. Because, at the end of the day, if you're just using it and copying it, then it's not authentic. And especially in marketing, authentic marketing is what sells because your energy is what will sell your brand. Like you have to bring your brand through in order to connect
it?
to your
Hmm.
customers. So it can be easy to think, well, I'll just go onto one of these, platforms, get this written email and then just copy and paste it. But you will lose some of the magic of why your customers buy from you if you do that. I think though at the end of the day, it's just about having some discernment around what you should use and where the boundaries should be, and being able to know when you've maybe gone too far with it, but using it as something that's going to help you rather than something that you are using as a replacement for your own creativity. Because I also do think, we have to also look at, I guess, like the nuance within creation, which is that your mindset matters. Going into a state of flow is really important when you're creating. Having that connection to your message is really important. Feeling like you've created something as well and feeling proud and accomplished will also help you sustain yourself with your business because you'll feel like you're doing something. I think if you only use these apps to create all of your content, you might end up feeling like you've cheated a little bit, and that's probably not going to build your self-worth the same way as, thinking like, oh, I wrote this and it was quite challenging, but I'm really proud because I wrote it. I think it's knowing, yeah, your limit. And I think it's going to be different for everyone. I would encourage everyone,
Right.
and I have encouraged all of my clients to experiment. But I think ultimately it's like being honest with yourself and not being too lazy, not using it as a quick fix, but
Yeah.
using it as a tool and more as an assistant than anything else.
Got it. All right. Great. Emily, thank you for being on my show. It's been wonderful to have a conversation about what's going on in your business, in your world around AI. Give Ian a big hug for me. We love the
I
fella,
will.
and you know this already. I love you a lot, and we're looking forward. Me and your mum are looking forward to seeing you and the rest of the kids in October next month when we come back. So, thanks very much for being on the show. It's been lovely having you as a guest, and take care. See you soon.
Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dad. Thanks for having me. Love you too.